Hey guys, Brett here, connecting from UbiCentral, and today I'm going to be giving you all my first impressions and thoughts on Assassin's Creed Syndicate. For those of you who don't know, I recently had the opportunity to play the game for a couple of hours, so I have a good amount of things to talk about in this video. And with that said, let's get started. Initially, my biggest concern for the game before I got a chance to play was how it was going to perform, especially on release. We all know that Unity had a ton of performance issues at launch, so it makes sense on why this would be a huge concern. Fortunately though, Syndicate ran pretty darn well. I didn't encounter any frame rate drops, major glitches, or crashes during my 4-hour playthrough. The frame rate was a steady 30 FPS, but as far as the resolution goes, I can't really give you an exact number as that's a lot harder to figure out. But if I had to guess, it seemed like the game was running in 1080p on the PS4. But take that with a grain of salt until Ubisoft releases the official specs. Now let's switch gears, see what I did there, and talk about the gameplay itself. Probably the biggest game changer, at least for me, was surprisingly the combat and not the rope launcher. I found myself so many times getting into hand-to-hand combat situations rather than just going in stealthy, and I feel like part of that is because combat is a lot more difficult now, which makes it that much more satisfying. And don't get me wrong, being stealthy is really hard as well, but it's just something about the combat that is just more entertaining to watch. But that's just my opinion. And going back to the rope launcher, which I mentioned, wasn't really a big game changer, at least for me. To be honest, I used it quite a bit and it works really well, but at the same time, I got around the city just fine without it. I did notice the city is kind of made for it though, but it's up to you if you want to use it or not. And while on the topic of gameplay still, I wanted to discuss both Evie and Jacob's playstyle, since that is one of the game's selling points. Evie is supposed to be the character that is more stealthy, while Jacob is more into combat. However, that really wasn't the case. I could be just as stealthy with Jacob as I could with Evie, until I unlocked the chameleon ability later in the game. Now don't get me wrong, both Jacob and Evie have different upgrades you can unlock for their playstyles, but I really didn't see a huge difference until I got that ability for Evie, and that basically made her invisible. Other than that though, you can do the same sort of stuff with both characters, so again, it's up to you who you really want to play as more. Moving on to the missions, I played some from both Sequence 3 and 7. Honestly though, I wasn't really paying attention to the main story missions, and that's because I didn't really want to be spoiled before I got the game on October 23rd. So instead of focusing on the main missions, I did a ton of side activities, such as Fight Club, street races, gang wars, child liberation missions, you get the point. There's a ton of things to do in the open world aspect of the game, which was really nice to find out since the game doesn't have multiplayer or co-op this time around. Another pleasing thing to find out was the customization from Unity is basically returning in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. There was a lot of options you could choose from, and they all have different stats that will affect your character. And the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video was the leveling system. There was a point in the game where I was a level 1 and I went to a level 8 stronghold, and I just wanted to see if being a different level would actually matter, and it does. The enemies were basically invincible. They had a ton of health and they actually were a lot smarter when it came to attacking. This was one of those things where I thought, okay, Ubisoft is just throwing this on the game. They're not really going to have a real system. But to my surprise, I was completely wrong. They clearly spent a lot of time on the leveling system, which was really nice to find out. And that brings us to the end of the video. Just to summarize everything real quick, basically the game ran very smooth on the PS4. I had no frame rate drops or crashes. There was some pop-ins, but they weren't too noticeable while playing through the game. The combat for me was the biggest game changer and was very satisfying. The rope launcher made getting through the city faster, but it's not really needed if you don't want to use it. Jacob and Evie have a ton of upgrades for their playstyles, but I could pretty much use both of them for any situation until I unlocked the chameleon ability. There was a lot of side activities in the open world. Customization is just like Unity, which was really nice. And last but not least, the leveling system was actually a part of the game. If you have any questions for me, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll try to respond as much as I can. As always though, to stay up to date on everything Ubisoft, make sure to subscribe right here on UbiCentral.
Please like this video. and subscribe for more from UbiCentral.